Chapter 7, Crucifixion, Resurrection. Okay, so I'm really glad this is coming here because one of the things that I think is so important when it comes to any form of spirituality is redefining some of these big hitting events that are used to make people feel guilty or feel ashamed, or in some way say you have to do something to be saved, you have to earn your way, and that something good could be achieved through great suffering. Now, good things can be achieved through suffering. I've suffered a lot, and a lot of good has come from it. But to say that an all-loving God would require that is, there's some pluralities we get to look at in this sort of all-loving, all-knowing God idea that we're sold, who also will send you to hell for eternal damnation if you don't believe what he wants you to believe, or would send his son to be gruesomely murdered just to save you. I'm sorry, and I love what Jesus is about. I think there's a big message to the crucifixion and resurrection. I think that it's misinterpreted. So let me just say that. But to think that, this was a God who came to die for us. I mean, God loved that son, I guess, more than us. So we're not at the same level as that son. And rather than change the rules, he sent that son to have to suffer being a human and then brutally murdered in order to save us all. That's just it's not logical. I'm sorry. And that we say what Jesus did for us was so amazing. Now, while it's a symbolic thing, and I'm going to provide a few different areas that talk into the symbology of what it was. Neville's take is going to be different than some of the other stuff because it's not going to talk about really the actual event. It's going to talk about a form of creation that's possible and the message it gives us. Now, but first of all, no one can die for anyone else's sins. That's impossible. We're each walking our own journey. But also, if anyone was told they could die and save several billion people, actually probably hundreds of billions of people, once you get to how many people will live before and after Jesus's death, to say that he has to die to save all of them, people make that out to be super godly. Like, wow, he died for me. That's amazing. But most average humans will die for one or two people they care about. If you told me I had to suffer and die to save 100 billion, it would be a really crappy 24 to 48 hours, but I would do it, and most people would, to save billions of other people. Like I said, they do it just to save their family. So it doesn't elevate him to some amazing God status that he's willing to do that. I'm just being frank. And that doesn't belittle the message of the crucifixion, but it's misunderstood. And we have to start to address some of these logical errors. Otherwise, and again, if you believe it, please do. I'm not saying that. But for those of us that question it, let's follow that trail, because there gets to be logic and truth beyond that, right? There gets to be, my God is logical. My God is consistent and congruent. And if he's all loving, then he's all loving all the time. And he's not going to damn me to hell. I may damn myself to hell. But he certainly, or she, or whatever you want to say, it would not do that to me. But since it gives me free will, it gives me the option to damn myself. And so I think that's the interesting thing we need to get at, is that we have a lot more power in what's happening here. We've probably created this world over sort of the top of God's perfect creation. And we're continuing to create a lot of death and illness and destruction because we don't realize that we're the ones doing it. We put it off on the devil, or we put it off on God doing it to us, or, we really need to be asking some deeper questions about this. That would be my point. Now let's jump into Neville and talk about the crucifixion and resurrection according to his interpretation. Chapter 7 of I Know My Father. The events of crucifixion and resurrection are so interwoven that they must be explained together, for one determines the other. This mystery is symbolized on earth in the rituals of Good Friday and Easter. You have observed that these days are not fixed, but change from year to year. They fall anywhere from the last week of March to the last week of April. The day is determined in this manner. The first Sunday after the full moon in Aries is celebrated as Easter. Aries begins on the 21st day of March and marks the beginning of spring. This movable date should tell the observant one to look for some interpretation other than the one given him. Seen from the earth, the sun, in its northern passage, appears at the spring season of the year, to cross the imaginary linemen call the equator. So it is said by the mystic to be crossified or crucified that man may live. Springtime. They noticed that soon after this event took place, right? So the sun in its northern passage appears at the spring season of the year to cross the equator. I'll just say that again. So they noticed that soon after this event took place, all nature began to rise or resurrect itself from a long winter's sleep. Therefore, they concluded that this disturbance of nature at this season of the year was due directly to this crossing. And I can tell you, we get so far away from this living in cities and cement, and we don't even notice the seasons. But when I was out on the ranch, it was really wild. Everything would be gray and cold, and almost inexplicably. You could barely even tell why, but we have a lot more predictive mechanisms. And obviously I know a lot more about, the weather and seasons now, scientifically and biologically, but green would just start to pop out everywhere. It was almost like it didn't even get that much warmer. You didn't even really know what was happening. And suddenly grass is growing and seeds are growing and leaves are coming out. And so I could completely understand that before we even had this scientific knowledge or biological piece, seeing the world, you would look for an explanation as to why suddenly everything went from dead to living again. But you have to be around nature to really, and deeply around nature in the seasons to get, I think, how mystical it seems to be. Thus they believed that the Son must have shed his blood at the Passover. And I always like calling God's Son S-U-N, because I think all God is light. And I believe God's Son is a massive light creation. So why we changed it over to S-O-N, I'm not sure, and made it is also a child. God created us, and in that way we are his children. But we're probably genderless, so I don't think there's any reason to make it male. And I have a feeling that it means the Son. And in this case, it's funny because it's literally talking about the sun and its placement. Thus they believe that the Son must have shed his blood at the Passover, passing over the equator. If these dates mark the death and resurrection of Jesus, they would be fixed like all other historical events, but this is not the case. However, these dates do symbolize the death and resurrection of the Lord, but this Lord is your awareness of being. It is recorded that he gave his life that you may live. I am, capitalized, you're thinking, come that you might have life and that you might have it more abundantly. So God became man so that we might live this experience. As spring is the time of the year when the millions of seeds, which all winter lay buried in the ground, suddenly spring into visibility, that man might live, and because the mystical drama of the crucifixion and resurrection is in the nature of this yearly change. It is celebrated at this spring season of the year, but actually it's taking place every moment of time. The being that is crucified is our awareness of being. The cross is your conception of yourself. The resurrection is the lifting into visibility of this conception of yourself. So in other words, I know who I am, or your awareness of being is your God force. Your cross is the conception or idea that you have of yourself, and the resurrection is that becoming in the physical world. So your creative power is then utilized or nailed to whatever I think I am, and then we see it, and then it shows up. This would be the same thing as, Abraham talking about this idea of, if you can feel and believe you are something, then it will become so, because you are a creative force. And he's aligning that with the resurrection, which I think is amazing the way he does this. Far from being a day of mourning, Good Friday should be a day of rejoicing, for there can be no resurrection without a crucifixion. So you cannot be who you are or become more than what you want to be without this process. The thing to be resurrected in your case is that which you desire to be. To do this, you must feel yourself to be the thing desired. Abraham says that every day. If you listen to Abraham, you must feel I am that, for I am the resurrection and the life. Yes, I am, your awareness of being, is the power resurrecting and making alive that which you are aware of being. Two shall agree on touching anything, and I shall establish it on earth, is a quote from the Bible. The two agreeing are you, your awareness, and the thing desired, that which you have decided on to be through becoming aware of it. When this agreement is attained, the crucifixion is completed. Two have crossed or crucified each other. I am, and that thing desired have joined. I am now nailed. I am is capitalized as your awareness of being. I am now nailed upon the form of that. So this sort of invisible, magical, creative power has now been nailed to a form and becomes physically manifested. The nail that binds upon you upon the cross is the nail of feeling. The mystical marriage is now consummated, and the result will be the birth of a child or the resurrection of a son bearing witness of his Father. Consciousness is wedded to that which it is conscious of being. The world of expression is the child confirming this union, or the physical world. So the physical world is showing all the children that we're essentially creating with this creative process in our minds. The day you cease to be conscious of being that which you are now conscious of being, which is Emily. I'm conscious of being Emily at this time and all the things around Emily. That day your child or expression shall die, my body, and return to the bosom of his Father, the faceless, formless awareness. So my spirit will not die. It will just detach from being aware of this and go back to what it was. All expressions are the results of such mystical marriages. So every physical thing you see. So the priests are correct when they say all true marriages are made in heaven and can only be dissolved in heaven. And I do believe that you can't die until you choose to die. But let me clarify this statement by telling you that heaven is not a locality. It is a state of consciousness. The kingdom of heaven is within you. In heaven, consciousness, God is touched by that which he is aware of being. Who has touched me? This is a quote by Jesus. Who has touched me? For I perceive virtue has gone out of me. And Neville is aligning that with being, when God is touched by what he is aware of being, then the virtue flows out into a physical form. The moment this touching or feeling takes place, there is an offspringing or going out of me into visibility or physical form taking place. The day man feels, I am free, I am wealthy, I am strong, God, or I am, is touched by these qualities or virtues, and the results of such touching will be seen in the birth or resurrection of the qualities felt. For a man must have visible confirmation of all that he is conscious of being. Now you will know why man, or manifestation, is always made in the image of God. Your awareness images and outpictures all that you are aware of being. I am the Lord, and beside me there is no other God. I am the resurrection and the life. So whatever's showing up in your life, what Neville's getting at is that's what you're aware of being. If you want to be something else, then you get to focus through, you can use his processes or Abraham's, or you can either meditate and empty sort of your mind and focus on something so it's a bit blank, or you can focus, as Neville would have you do, on really feeling like the thing that you are. So really, I am strong or rich. Now, if you feel those things and you're focusing on them and you feel more the absence of them, then stop, because that is what you're aware of being, and that's what you'll manifest more. And it's better to focus on something else that makes you feel happier. But essentially, he's saying that whatever we focus on and can really feel to be true for us, whether it is or not, it will become that way because we feel it and we're using our creative mechanism to bring it into the physical world. So great words by Neville. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. Have a blessed day.